Welcome back, guys. Thanks for joining us. We have a new project on set today. This is a small block Chevrolet, but you can do this with anything, your Mopars, your small block Fords, big blocks, whatever you want to do. But we're going to show you how to do a DIY teardown, inspection, and a block home. But this is to save you some money instead of having to go to a machine shop and spend $1,200 or however much you end up spending on your used block. I know this block ran, and we're not building no NHRA top fuel jacks promoter here. Take this with a grain of salt. I am no means a professional engine builder. We're going to go ahead and tear this thing down, and we're going to get right into it right now. Alright, we're going to go ahead and try to rotate this thing over. This thing's being a pain in the butt and it doesn't want to spin. So this thing's been sitting in a garage. You can see the crank is a little bit rusted up, so we're going to clean that up too. But the first thing we're going to do, we are going to start taking the pistons out. If you've never done this before, especially if your motor's been ran, the pistons do go a certain way in a small block. There is a front and a back, but for this implication, we are going to need to make sure that the pistons and rods and the main caps go back in the same location that they come out of. So you want to make sure that you label the pistons as much as you can. We are going to try to find something to mark these with. So we'll be right back while we do that. Alright, so we got the tops of the pistons labeled now. I don't know how well you can see that, but what I did, I just used a wire wheel to knock some of the burn off of the top of the pistons. Did both sides, made sure they're all labeled. Let me flip the motor over here and I will show you the bottom. And on the bottoms, I've numbered them right on top of the caps. I can't see those. Those are a little hard to see, but you want to make sure that the cap goes back on the correct rod. Probably can't see these, but there is a number stamped in these. I'd probably say these mains are factory, and they were labeled from the factory, but they do have stamps in them, so we're not going to worry about that. You can also take pictures of this stuff, guys. It's really easy to track all this stuff, make sure it doesn't get mix matched. But when you're doing the bottom, remember that the pistons are upside down, so they're, make sure that you're doing the correct side. I ran into that problem. I was like, well, that's not right. But all right, so now we're going to put you back up on the tripod. We're going to start by taking the rods loose from the crank, because we got to get the pistons out first. Remember, leave your main bolts in so you can spin the crank over, because we're definitely going to have to do that. We're going to have to find a bolt for the front of this. It's a fine thread, so we can spin this motor over so we can get to all the nuts and bolts on the rod caps. So we'll be right back. We're going to go try to find a bolt for the front. Then we'll spin this thing over. Alright, so we had to go find a shim. I had a bolt out of another motor, but I didn't want to bottom it out and break the bolt off in the crank, so I had to find a shim, and I got some washers. I got this thing turning over pretty good now. Kind of hard to turn over, but I think it just had some grime in it, and it's turning over fairly free now. Alright, this is just if you are planning on reusing your hardware out of your mains and your rod caps. You want to try to use hand tools so you can kind of feel how they came apart. Feel if they're loose for some reason. You might need to check that bolt or the nut. But we're going to go ahead and use hand tools to take this thing apart. These are a little bit tight, so we're going to actually use a breaker bar type strong arm. Make sure they're all tight like that. If I were to reuse these, I'd probably try to, make sure that, keep track of where this actually came from. Right now, we are going to try to knock this piston loose. Some people use a pry bar, but I wanted to use something a little softer so we're not damaging the piston. There we go. Like I said, you know, you want to keep your main caps and everything together. All right. Now you just don't want to knock the piston out on the ground. Piston number 1. So right now we have piston number 1 out. We're going to continue, spin this motor over and take all the pistons out. We will then take the crank out, which is pretty simple. Then we're going to look over everything and make sure if you are going to reuse stuff, everything's good to reuse, that sort of thing. So we'll be right back after we get this thing all tore apart. Alright guys, we got all the pistons out now with no problems. They're all labeled. We're going to go over, we're going to check those and, you know, look for damage or whatever. One of the rod, I think it was number 3. Yeah, the rod is a little tight in the piston. I think it just needs a little bit of oiled up. It was a little tight. It was the only problem I seen. Rod mains, they look really clean. Just need to be cleaned up. Probably not going to have to do anything to those. But right now, we got another breaker bar out. Right now, we're going to take the main caps loose. Once we get the main caps loose, then we're going to move on to checking it. Right now, we're going to break this bad boy the rest of the way apart. Alright guys, so we are back again today. Today we are going to show you how to go over and inspect your parts if you are planning on reusing them. We're going to go over just some stuff to look for. We're not going to get into it too heavy, but we're just going to kind of show you some things to look for if you're not real familiar. But I can give you some pointers and kind of steer you in the right direction. So let's go ahead and we'll get right into this. I did a quick glance over the pistons. Which is where we're going to start, of one of my pistons that is damaged that I did not see. So on the skirt, I don't know how well you can see this or not, but on the skirt we have major scratches along here, and we have some scratching in the block on the cylinder wall. That is stuff you want to look for. I'm going to have a couple other people check that out and see what they think. And I'm gonna, once we hone it, I'm gonna check it again and see what I think. Hopefully we don't have to take it to the machine shop, but we'll get into that later once we get to that point. But some of the stuff you want to look for, starting with the pistons, you want to check and make sure that a valve hasn't been smacking the top of your piston. These look pretty good. They're nice and caked. There could be chunks taken out of the sides of the skirts. You know, look around where the wrist pin goes through, make sure there's no cracking or that sort of thing. Another thing you want to check, you want to make sure your piston and connecting rod is nice and free, because that is power loss. Just like this. Ow, it's my finger. You want to make sure that your connecting rod, wrist pin, and piston is nice and free. Number 3 is going to have some cleanup, because it is all galded up. It moves, but it's not free. Next thing, your rods. You want to look for bluing along the bottom and the top of the rod, close to where the bearing and wrist pin is. Hairline fractures. Don't know if you're going to see those with the human eye or not, but you want to look for that kind of thing, because that can cause a piston to go shooting up and you might hit SpaceX satellites or some alien up in the sky. Then he's going to be pissed because you didn't want to check your connecting rod. If you're planning on reusing your rod bearing, you want to make sure that there's no major scarring. You can check for that. run your finger or your fingernail. Like this one, it's got a little bit of wear, so you probably would be all right reusing those. You want to make sure that it hasn't moved, cause a spun bearing that can mess up your crank, your whole engine, get metal shavings in your oil, that sort of thing. From the rod, we're going to move on to the main cap. Your main cap, you want to, check and make sure that your crank has not been rubbing up against the side of your main cap. Hairline fractures, if you can even see that with the human eye, like I said earlier. You want to make sure that your bearing looks okay. This has quite a bit of wear. I don't think it's anything major because there's a lot of load on the main bearing. The crank sits on top of the main bearing just like this, and it's constantly rubbing on top of it. So I'd figure the bottom's going to have more wear than the top. But you want to make sure there's no major scarring, or even this bearing has spun a little bit. Another thing you want to check, when the person, whoever built this motor, you want to make sure that there's no damage on top of the flat surface where it bolts to the block, that it hasn't like vibrated or has moved or flexed to cause problems in the future if it's not seated well. So bolts, we're going to get into the bolts. The rod bolts, I'm definitely probably 100% going to replace these, because that is the number one failure in a small block on the bottom end, is connecting rod bolts. They're little bitty, they get beat the out of by pushing and pulling, but you want to make sure, if you are planning on reusing that, make sure your threads are not galled up to where it's going to cause a problem with the nut. The nut comes loose eventually. You want to make sure that these are nice and tight in there and not walking around. Same thing exactly with the main bolt. I don't know how much you can actually check this or not. I don't know the measurements on how much these possibly could stretch, but the main bolts, they don't have as much load and stuff on them as the rods will, but you want to check for stretch. The LS, I know this is not an LS, but the LS, the main bolts are designed to stretch when you tighten them, for a preload, and they're a one-time use. What I mean by that, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, I'm not going to give you no readout on this thing because I don't want to sound stupid. But if you're measuring these, you want to just take your micrometer, and I would probably go over all of these and just check and make sure that that they're close and not like a ½ inch off from each other, like that. So like those were identical. If all those are, you're good to go. Same thing with your main cap bolt. There's two different sizes, so you're gonna have two different readings, obviously. But you want to just make sure that they're semi-close. Make sure they're not 6 inches off from each other. Go on to the next one. That sort of thing. Check this stuff if you're planning on reusing it. Some guys, probably the old school guys, would slap them in there and not even think twice. But it wouldn't hurt to check. Alright guys, another thing that you need to check out, one of the most important parts of a short block is your crankshaft. You want to look over your crankshaft, make sure none of your mains, actually where the crank rides and where the rods actually ride. You want to make sure there's no scarring like I had on the cylinder walls, like something got in there and scratched it up. You want to make sure there's no scarring, no big chunks melted into the mains. No lack of oil. These look pretty good. They got a little bit of wear, but they're going to be great for what we're going to do. But you also want to look for if your crank has been rubbing on anything, possibly, or big chunks out of it, like something's fell down in there and smacked into it. Just make sure that everything looks correct. Make sure nothing looks out of place or looks like it's been damaged in the past from something. So just do a real good thorough check over that. Feel it with your finger, run your hand around it, make sure you didn't miss anything with the eye. But this looks pretty good. We're going to clean it up. It's been sitting for a little bit. It's got a little bit of surface rust on the actual crank, but nothing on the mains, so we're going to be good to go. That is pretty sure all you want to kind of look over for the most part for damages, wear, that sort of thing. We are going to start honing this block. I'm going to show you how to do that next. But anyway, guys, I'm not going to jabber anymore. We're going to put this off to the side. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to show you how to hone the block. And I'll show you where lucky number 7 has messed up our cylinder wall. I'm going to try to show you that. I don't know if I can. It's kind of dark down in there. but I'm going to try to show you where it's kind of scuffed up. Hopefully it's not that bad. So stay tuned. We'll be right back to rocking and rolling. What is up, guys? We're back. We are actually outside today. It's supposed to be nice and warm. I don't recommend honing your motor in the garage because it's gonna make a mess unless you have like a drain pan or something big enough to put under your engine, but I don't. So we're gonna do this outside today. First, we are going to show you this block, kind of what to look for before you start honing. You know, inspect, make sure you don't find anything, which we have one cylinder that we have an issue with that we're gonna have to focus on first, but we're gonna show you that right now so you can see what to look for. So right there in the cylinder, hopefully you can see this pretty well. Right here we have some scarring along the cylinder wall. As you can see, it's kind of below the ring. The ring stops right here at this ridge, so it is below where the rings go, so the piston actually is not going to run over that. So if we get all the burrs out of it and whatnot, we should be good to go. Now, like this cylinder, you see scratches that run from top to the bottom of the cylinder. That is okay. That is normal wear, but that right there is not normal. So you want to look for that kind of stuff. All these other cylinders, they look good to go for honing. Right now we are going to show you what we are going to use for lubricant when you do this. When you do this, you want to use some kind of lubricant. I've heard all kinds of different types of stuff people use, but this is what we're going to use. So you may use something different, which is fine. All right, guys, this is not water. This is diesel fuel. This is environmental friendly diesel fuel, so you can get it on the ground. It's not going to hurt anything, won't kill anything, that sort of thing. You want to keep it nice and lubed up while you're doing this. So we poked a hole in the top of this so we can spray it out onto the cylinder. But you're going to want to squirt this on the cylinders as you hone. Now our hone that we got is Amazon special. Paid like 25 bucks for it. And we're just going to attach it directly to our Milwaukee hone machine. When you do this, you want to just make sure that you keep the hone nice and square in the cylinder as you're doing this. Like I said earlier, machine shop will have a machine to do this that keeps it nice and square. So you want to make sure you keep it nice and square as you're doing this. So let's go ahead and we will start on cylinder number 7, since that's where we had the issue, and then we will go so on. So when you do this, you only want to run it up and down 3-4 times because you're going to go slow. You just want to get a crosshatch and you want to get everything nice and smooth. So you're not going to sit here and hone this thing for like 5 minutes. You know, this is going to be a quick turnaround job. Pretty much all you're going to do. I would definitely wet the cylinder down quite a bit before. So this is a 230 grit. It's a little more coarse than I probably need, but it's what come with it. Just get it nice and square, and as you're doing this, you just want to spray this in there and keep it lubed up. You just want to go 2 or 3 times down the cylinder, up and down. Just until you get a crosshatch. Now you may have to put tension on this. You can screw this and put tension on it. It looks like I need some tension on it. I'm not getting much of a crosshatch. Alright, now we got some cross-hatching in this. We're going to move on to the next one. Same thing, just rinse and repeat. You're going to go all the way around. Once we get finished, we'll go back. We need to work a little bit more on the cylinder. Still got a little bit of a burr. So we're going to come back to it and focus on it at the end. But we're going to go ahead and get some hatch in the other 7 cylinders. And then we will show you what it kind of looks like afterward. Alright, so we got the cylinders all honed up now. We are going to prep for washing this thing. We're going to run over to town and get some gas for a pressure washer. See if I can get it started. Once we get it started, we're going to start cleaning this thing. Still got to take the old galley plugs out. There's one right here, and there's 3 back here in the back. Those are a little difficult to get out because you can strip the heads off of those pretty easy. Once we get it nice and clean, then we're going to bag and tag it and set it to the side for at least now. So right now, we're going to run over to town, and we'll be right back, ready to rock and roll again. Alrighty, we got the old galley plugs out. It's just a square-headed Allen screw. On the small block, there's 3 in the back. There's 1 there, and there's 1 there, but there's no Allen screw that goes in there. But what we're going to do is we bought a rifle cleaning tool. You know, extends and it's got brushes and stuff on the end of it. We're going to stick it up in the old galley all the way to the front and clean all of any kind of debris that might be in the block out. Your best idea is to pressure wash it, but I can't get the pressure washer started, so we're just going to wash it by hand. I got a bucket full of soapy water, and I got some Purple Power degreaser, so we are going to wash this thing really good. I'm going to sit you on a time lapse because I know you don't want to see me sit here and wash this thing, but anyway, let's get to washing. Alright guys, so this thing is cleaned up now and ready to be bagged and tagged for storage. It is clean enough for now. We will probably re-clean it again just to knock any kind of dust off of it that may get into it while it sits. We're not going to be reassembling this anytime soon. We are going to be focused on the Screaming Banshee. We should have the bed back for it anytime now, hopefully next week maybe. And then we'll be focused on it. We're going to try to get this thing finished, and then we will start on the motor and start building that for upcoming projects for later in the year. Pretty excited about that. Need some more horsepower, but until then, thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. All of our subscribers, we're getting really close to 200 subscribers now. Wouldn't do it without you guys, or I'd be just sitting here talking to myself. But anyway, thanks guys. Remember, keep on hot rodding. See you guys next time.